Over the past month, I've made fun of a whole bunch of bad structure decks, but in today's episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Explained, I wanted to talk about a theme that recently got support in Circuit Break and actually came out originally as a structure deck that I believe is very good, at least for Rogue status, and it has seen competitive play many years ago, but I think with the new card from Circuit Break, it could potentially see Rogue play going forward, and that is Fire Kings. So the central Fire King strategy is just strong cards to gain advantage. That's pretty popular in the past year or so of Yu-Gi-Oh! We see cards like Dragonic Diagram destroying True Kings. We see like all the Metaphos cards. But when this deck came out, it was still relatively unheard of, which made it quite unique for the time being. What is the main strategy of this? Well, it all centers around Fire King High Avatar Garunix, which arguably has the best effect that you trigger on its own destruction. So if it's destroyed by a card effect, it brings itself back from the graveyard during the next standby phase, and notice it's the next standby phase, not your next standby phase, and then it destroys all the other monsters on the field, and that's really cool because it means if your opponent kills it with like Mere Force or Regeki or Dark Hole or anything along those lines, it comes back during the next turn and clears the board except for itself, so you can then attack for 2,700 points directly. That's really powerful, and it also starts its own loop with itself. If you have two of these in the graveyard that are coming back, that means that every single turn until your opponent can deal with one of them, you're blowing up the field. That's really cool. Its second effect helps you if your opponent deals with it through battle, which they'll most likely want to avoid the destruction effect, and that lets you special summon any other Fire King monster from your deck besides itself. So your opponent, their only options for dealing with Garunix is either negating its effect with a card like Solemn Strike, or by killing it in a way that doesn't destroy it. So by bouncing it back to your hand or banishing it, something along those lines. But if they destroy it and it hits the graveyard, no matter how they're doing it, you're going to gain some advantage off of its effect, which makes it a very effective card for sort of leveling the playing field against decks that might be able to summon more monsters than you are. But you can keep up with them in some ways just because you're blowing up the field every turn. The other card that you really want to focus on destroying is Fire King Avatar BARONG. So when this card is destroyed by a card effect during the next standby phase, you get to add a Fire King card from your deck to your hand. There are a lot of good Fire King cards. Obviously, High Avatar Garunix is one of them, but there's some spells that are also very powerful that we'll talk about in a second. But this is really good too. It's a level 4 Beast Warrior Fire monster, which will have some synergy with cards we're going to talk about in a second. And also, it carries the effect that if a Fire King monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. That lets you keep on the pressure, because one of the things your opponent could try to do to actually win the game is by destroying your Garunix and then defeating you before the next standby phase happens. But you can then special summon Barong from your hand as sort of an attack blocker, which is kind of neat. The best way and the most effective way that people have been able to destroy Fire King the past like 4 years that this card has been around has been, I guess it'd be 3 years, going on 4 years, it's whatever, 4 years, is Fire King Avatar YAKSHA. So YAKSHA has the exact same stats as Barong, which actually is important because both of them have 200 defense as fire monsters, which means you can bring them back with the spell card Rekindling. Now, Rekindling right now is at 1 copy per deck, so that's probably not the most consistent strategy, but if that card ever goes to semi-limited or unlimited, this deck gets even better, just something to note. When it's destroyed, you destroy another card in your hand or that you control. This is very powerful because one of the early problems with Fire Kings when they originally were created and YAKSHA wasn't quite out yet was that if you drew the Garunix, there wasn't like a really great way to get it out of your hand. But as long as you draw YAKSHA with it, or as long as you search YAKSHA next to Garunix, anytime your opponent kills the YAKSHA, you can then destroy the Garunix in your hand to jumpstart that effect summoning chain. That's really good. And then it also carries the exact same first effect that Barong does, where you can special summon it from the hand, and I think that's pretty good as well. In the case of YAKSHA, it's even better, because if they kill the YAKSHA, then you can destroy another thing from your hand to block even more damage. It's just a very good all-around card. And then moving on, and the main reason that I wanted to make this video was the new Fire King Avatar, and this name's really dumb, but it's ARVATA, which is, I think they call it an anagram I think. When it's the same letters as Avatar, just mixed around. But Fire King Avatar ARVATA is really, really good. This card came out when Fire Kings were first created. I think they would have been a top contender for sure. So basically, when a monster effect is activated while it's on the field, you can negate the activation and then destroy another fire monster from your hand or field. That's ridiculous. It's a free negation effect that, and I say free because the drawback of destroying your own card actually is the entire point of your strategy. You can pop a Barong with this, which means you negate a card effect and you get a search. You can pop Garunix with it, which means you negate a card effect, then you get a 2700 beater. And then when it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard by anything, so battle or card effect, you can target one fire, beast, beast warrior, or wing beast monster in your graveyard, except itself, obviously, special summon it, but it has its effects negated, also destroyed during the end phase. So that effect can be used in a couple different ways. The most common use is to bring back one of the either Barong or Yaksha to then make a rank 4 or a link monster. Alternatively, you can bring back Garunix, attack for 2700 damage, and then it's destroyed during the end phase, so that during the next standby phase it comes back and blows up the field. But it's just a really solid all-around card. If you have Fire King Avatar ARVATA and then a Garunix in hand, you can get multiple Dark Hole effects and some negations as well, and I think that's really powerful. It really ties the whole deck together, gives it the defensive options that they needed, makes it a little bit faster as well. So those cards are the main 4 monsters in the deck. There are other Fire King cards that are sometimes played as one-ofs, but these are the main 4 that you'll want to play 3 of, possibly only 2 Garunix, but that's sort of personal preference. Anyway, moving on to the spells. We have Onslaught of the Fire Kings. This is what you're usually searching with Barong, and that's because it's so powerful. It's pretty much just an emergency teleport for Fire Kings that destroys them during the end phase. It actually carries the same effect negation effect as ARVATA, and that the monster that you summon has its on-field effects negated. Take note, though, that none of these except for actually have on-field effects, so that part really doesn't matter. It's just a straight emergency teleport for anything you want, as long as you don't control a monster and your opponent does. The other really good search card, and you've probably seen this in competitive play, especially in the Cosmo deck, is Fire King Island. So Fire King Island has multiple effects. First of all, if it goes to the graveyard or is banished, your whole field is destroyed, or all your monsters are destroyed. That's a huge drawback in certain decks, but in this deck it's not the biggest drawback just because it triggers your effects, but it is something to note. You don't really want to build a board that's too susceptible to destruction, because all your opponent needs to have is a Cosmic Cyclone or a Twin Twisters, and they can kill all the monsters. Just something to keep in mind. And then it has 2 other effects. So during your main phase, you can destroy a monster in your hand or you control to search a Fire King monster. Almost always you are trying to destroy a card like Barong or Garunix to search ARVATA. That's pretty much the most common play. And then also, if you control no monsters, you can special summon Garunix from your hand. I mean, I suppose if you play other Fire Wing Beast type monsters, you can special summon those, but mainly you're using that second effect just to bring out Garunix. It's very powerful. This card really brings the deck together, maybe even more so than ARVATA. It's just such a good card. It has everything you would want out of a Fire King field spell, and it really brings the deck to the next level. Maybe not so good is Circle the Fire Kings. This card was very good when it came out for dodging effects and stuff like that, and it's sort of like a pseudo Monster Reborn. It does make a lot of things miss timing, and it's not like the greatest card. It is a straight -1 until you actually destroy something that has like an effect in the graveyard. And I mean, it's okay. I don't think really that great anymore, but there was a time when this card was very powerful. It's still worth mentioning. It's still something you can search with Barong, so it's worth playing at least at 1 copy. So other cards that you can include in your deck that aren't Fire Kings would be Fire Formation Tenki. This card's fantastic. It can search any of your 3 level 4 Fire King monsters, whichever one you need for that situation. Anytime you can open like Tenki and Fire King Island, it actually gives you access to most of the cards in your deck, but also you can use it to search multiple other cards. My 2 favorites are Coach Soldier Wolfbark and Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear. Both these cards deal with different things. Wolfbark can push out rank 4 monsters, Bear can deal with monsters on the field, and also sort of steamroll your opponent by just getting you to more Fire Formation cards. Both cards are great search options. They maybe have been slightly power crept out of the game since this deck was last played, but I still think they're worth playing because you already want to be playing Tenki. There's not really a reason to avoid playing these two cards. They're solid normal summons at the very least. And then lastly, the card that I'm sort of conflicted on is Supply Squad. I know I've talked about this card in other videos. I don't actually think Supply Squad is like the greatest card in the world. However, I do think that if you play this deck with a lot of hand traps, especially like Ash Blossom or Ghost Ogre and Maxi and cards like that, that makes Supply Squad a lot better. I think my biggest problem with Supply Squad in a lot of decks is the lack of ability to actually trigger its effect, but this deck almost always will be destroying one of your own cards every single turn, even on your own turn, which means you can get a lot of draws, and the best way to leverage those draws, and it's something that matters, is by playing a lot of hand traps to draw, because then if your opponent kills something on their turn, you have the potential to draw into a card like Ash Blossom or Maxi, and then they've kind of dug their own grave because they've given you a free draw, and now you have a card to stop their next play. So I think in that way, Supply Squad might be more viable in this deck, more so than any other deck that I've played it in, and I think it's at least worth mentioning, even if it's not the fastest card, the most consistent card, just because this deck is probably the best fit for it. Anyway, though, that's going to wrap up this video of Yu-Gi-Oh! Explained. Like I said, I didn't cover every single Fire King card. There are a couple other monsters that you can look into if you really want to, but I covered all the main cards you would include into the deck. If you have any questions, comments, or advice, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will see you guys later. Bye.